Welcome to Practical Business Technology, where we keep you in the know about technology's impact on business. Today's show is sponsored by the Maricopa County Bar Association, and our host is Dave Kinsey, author and owner of Total Networks. Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're continuing our discussions on ransomware. This is our ransomware part 3, and I think this is probably the most exciting section where we talk about how you can protect yourself.
They're all exciting.
So if you haven't listened to our previous podcasts, I encourage you to go look at part 1 and part 2, where we talked about a little bit about the history of ransomware and how it works.
Yeah, we put things in perspective.
And today we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself. So in case you haven't been watching the news, ransomware continues to be on the rise. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger and more. So what can we do, Dave?
Ultimately, security is about layers, right? So we have the multiple layers. One of the first things we do is we make sure we're on a system that's patched and up to date. And
let's just take a moment to talk about patching and why that's important.
Sure. While there are flaws, there's when you're talking about computers and technology, it's technology made by human beings and they're imperfect. And what happens is the hackers, the people they're looking for vulnerabilities, they're looking for weaknesses. And when you look at something like weaknesses can be your password, right? Somebody can break into your network by gaining your password, and so you want to make sure that you have good passwords, have multi-factor authentication. That was one of the first things we talked about. But you also want to make sure you're starting from a system that is patched against known issues.
So latest patches also be aware that certain versions of operating systems might be so old that they aren't being patched. So you need to be on the latest versions as well.
Yeah, if you're still running Windows 7, that's no good. So, and Windows 11 is right around the corner. It's coming out, the end of 2021. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you have the latest patches.
So that's one layer.
What's
another layer?
Your antivirus, anti-malware is another layer. We already talked about passwords and security. You want to make sure that your systems that you've got all the reasonable tough protections. I'm going to talk about one extra protection, though, that has been gaining traction. More and more people are using it. It's something called managed threat response, or you might hear it called SOC and SIM. SOC is Security Operations Center, and SIM is SEIM, Security Event Information and Information Management. These are kind of reactive, but they're sort of proactive reactive.
So it's
steps.
In addition to your antivirus and anti-malware software, it's another layer.
Yeah,
software.
in addition to your your email protection, anti-spam, and bad filtering there and all that stuff. This is a layer that basically, say you do all your proactive steps correctly. Well, one of the things we've seen increasingly is a thing called exploiting what's called zero-day flaws. These are flaws that there is no patch for. The bad guys have basically found out about it and are exploiting it, quote unquote, in the wild. Means in the real world. It's not just in a lab. And so they're actually exploiting problems that if there's no patches that exist for. So, regardless of how bad actors get into your system, whether it's through a zero-day or through some other mechanism, this is an extra layer where you have. So let's talk about there's two components of it. It's a Security Operations Center, a team of people looking 24 hours a day at not just known bad activity, but suspicious activity.
So they're actually looking at your logs. That's one of the things that you might not have a person that can just constantly be reviewing logs of activity, right?
Yeah, well, they're looking at all sorts of what they call telemetry, basically activity. It could be from security event logs, and that's actually the other part of this thing. The security event information management. One of the things that bad actors do when they get in is if they're good, they generally don't want to be found and noticed. And so they do things like they start trimming logs that are recording their activity, so to sort of try to hide their tracks. Now, the very fact that they're doing that should be suspicious to somebody, if you've got software that's looking at it. But it can be effective, and that's why this thing called this SEIM, it sends the logs off site. So basically, the bad actors can try to trim and hide their tracks to their heart's content, but they can't, because the information isn't stored on those systems. It's stored on there for just a split second, and then it's shipped off off-site, and so that helps with your security. So these two layers, the SOC and the SIM, and the SIM, they work together. Basically, the Security Operations Center team is going to look at information from your SIM.
So this SOC team, I would imagine a small business can't employ a team of people to be their SOC, can they?
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
so is this something you normally would outsource?
Yeah. Well, and okay. So we could go back to Fortune 100 companies. They're realizing their risk profile, and they would have potentially a security team. They might have somebody 24 hours a day, or a team 24 hours a day looking at this, because they've got enough scale to be able to do that, or they have enough budget to hire the high-end security experts to do this. So this type of service is something that really started out with big corporations, like your Fortune 50, Fortune 100, eventually Fortune 500 type companies, to look for stuff. It's been filtering down now to smaller and medium businesses with options that can be cost effective, or they're expensive, but they're within the realm of reasonableness.
Right.
And I kind of view it, here we are in 2021, I think really the scales have tipped, the bad actors have just, gone on a tear, and the affordability of this has reached such a point where I think it's standard of care, reasonable standard of care for people that care about their security.
Right. Well, I think one of the things you need to think about when you think about your technology budget and your spend is not just what you're spending each month on certain things, but what are you saving by avoiding the problem?
Sure.
So if you were to have a breach, there's a lot of expense that maybe you're not thinking about that you're avoiding by being proactive. Mm-hmm. So it's an issue that we're even seeing with cyber liability insurance, that they're asking questions now about, do you have this SOC team kind of service, because that'll influence their insurance rates for you.
Yes, absolutely. We are seeing that they're asking about both SOC and SIM. For a long time, they've been asking about multi-factor authentication, and so that's pretty much a given that they're expecting that to be everywhere as part of their, to get a good rate or get a reasonable rate. We're now seeing this as well. So, it's a continual evolution, and so I guess just for those of you that may not be aware in terms of cyber liability insurance, this is insurance that really protects you against hackers. What the fallout would be.
Right. So this is in addition to your regular business, regular E&O insurance. This is another layer.
It's potentially an option
right.
that they add on to it, or it could be completely separate.
And so, what does the cyber liability insurance do if you do get hacked?
Well, I've had experience with this because unfortunately, we had, and this is actually a story that's going to talk about both SOC SIM service and cyber liability insurance. Okay, so we had a bad actor group called Hafnium that exploited a 0-day bug in Microsoft Exchange. Now, Microsoft Exchange is things that manage email and whatnot, email and calendar, contacts. We have almost all of our clients on Office 365. We had a very small handful of stragglers. I think we had 70 some odd Office 365, low 70s, and we had 4 that were not on Office 365 that had a local exchange. And we found that this 0-day bug that came out, we had an alert that came from the Department of Homeland Security, and every couple of years you get the, oh no, really serious alert type thing, and we saw that, and we're like all over it, getting systems patched immediately, saying, hey, we need to shut your system down and patch it and all that. Of those 4, all 4 of them were touched by the bad actors. Okay, all 4 of them, we see traces of the bad actors. On 2 of them, the bad actors actually actively made an incursion where they attempted to install their malware. It was, in this case, it was a command and control software called China Chopper Shell. But at any rate, that's the payload that would basically, they would deploy first and then use that to go look at, grab data from your system, do whatever the bad actors wanted to do. Well, so all 4 of them were touched. 2 of them, there was an active incursion. One of them, we had managed threat response, where bad actors were looking at it. This was in the middle of the night. The SOC team, sent us an alert. We're seeing suspicious activity. What do you want us to do? My guys didn't wake up in time, for this thing here. The SOC team jumped on it immediately, cut it off at the knees, and stopped it.
They didn't wait for
they did not wait for
a
us.
response. They saw there was a problem.
They saw there's a problem. They did try to reach us, initially, with
because that's the thing. You might have this happen in the middle of the
exactly.
night.
So at any rate, and they, so they were like, "But this is not good. This is not good. We're stopping it." And so, like a few minutes into this whole thing, they're stopping it. They're making sure that the bad actors, that they're unsuccessful. And so we spent a couple days following up with the SOC team. There's a lot of, discussions back and forth where we're looking at it, making sure it looks okay. We got the SOC teams, which have a whole bunch of security experts. They're making look at all okay. Everything's good. I mean, so it was a little stressful in terms of having to look at it, but, no big deal. All right. The other place where we actually had an incursion and they installed the China Chopper Shell, we were not so lucky. We didn't have SOC SIM service deployed there. We patched that server within a day, within I think within a few hours of when the alert came out from the Department of Homeland Security, but it was too late because it had been, out there in the wild for a while. And so we were doing things and we saw China Chopper Shells and we were deleting them and we were cutting off, different things. We took activity really quickly to stop it, but they had been in. And so we're like, we don't know what has happened. We don't have a SOC team that's analyzing this stuff. We're looking at it. So we said, look, we need to, they had cyber liability insurance. We're contacting their cyber liability insurance. We brought in a cyber expert, forensics person that was looking at it. We had all these, 7 a.m. meetings weekly, or we were daily for a while, where we're, figuring out what's going on with all this stuff. We spent over a month looking at it. The good news there was no signs of exfiltration. You can't know for sure because once again they were trimming the shells and trimming the logs and all that. But my the cyber forensics guy said he sees no evidence. There's typically evidence of staging and all this things that happen, and he didn't see anything of that. So but we spent a month.
A month of labor, so there was a lot of expense.
So much time and effort and stress. So yeah, I personally spent probably, 25% of my month was working on this, just following up on it. It was uncool. It was not great. And my people on my team were looking at it, and it was just, yeah.
So I think kind of one of the takeaways from that is that while the SOC SIM service is not free, it has an expense to it. It can avoid some bigger expense and stress and PR problems and all kinds of issues if you don't have it in place.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why we're looking to we're effectively going to be standardizing it across the board. We have enough. We've been working with our clients to get it deployed. We're working to basically get it everywhere. Yeah, it's expensive. There's no two ways around it. Having security is expensive, but a breach is even more expensive. Having downtime, having risk of data loss, and that's one of the things with ransomware. To kind of bring this back to circle with ransomware. Okay, why? We talked earlier. Why do the bad guys do it? Well, they do it to get paid in untraceable cryptocurrency, or very hard to trace cryptocurrency. They may do it for other reasons, for feeling of accomplishment or whatnot, but they're largely doing this for money. Some of these bad actors are ruthless. And they're not just saying, hey, to get your data back, pay us, because hopefully you can recover from backup. But they're saying, look, we're going to leak your data if you don't pay us either. So it's like, even if you can restore your backups, pay us and we won't leak your data. Now, is there honor among thieves? I don't know. Supposedly they're not leaking your data if you're getting paid. Paying the ransom is so wrong. So want to avoid this mess altogether by having all the appropriate layers. And I think one of the last layers to add in this today is a managed threat response, where you have a team looking at this 24 hours a day. You have the logs getting shipped off site. It's a continual escalation, unfortunately. There's no end in sight.
Right. I can think of one other layer we haven't talked about, and that's user education.
Oh, absolutely.
Because sometimes we talked about that this might happen through a vulnerability in your software, but another very common way is just through phishing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that phishing can appear as though it's coming from someone that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so having good employee education is another helpful step.
Simulated phishing,
Yes.
so that basically you try to trick people to click on the message. When they click on it, they, haha, you shouldn't have done that. Great, you learn when it doesn't count, so that they, when it does count, they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's layers we haven't even talked about.
Oh.
There's so many layers, and that's kind of the
There's
thing
network security layers. We could go on and on and on. This is where you work with your IT team and you get it all figured out. But the one thing I'd say, if your IT team has not talked with you, and they may be nervous to talk with you about this level of expense, or may have some pride that they don't want to have to work with an outside party to look at their security. I'm telling you right now, I think it's something it's needed, and so and it is not pervasive yet. It is very pervasive in the Fortune 500 companies, and it is increasingly being deployed in small to medium business.
So in closing, you should expect to increase your technology budget to address these new threats.
Yeah, I mean,
there are ways that you can continually add to what you're already doing.
Yep.
While ransomware is scary and it does affect a lot of businesses, it doesn't have to end your business.
Yeah, you don't want it to be fatal for your business. So
any other last thoughts, Dave?
No, I think we've talked about a tremendous amount here. So there's diligence and details and knowing that it's you have to continually raise your game security wise.
Well, very good. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.